When it comes to the royal family, two of the siblings that garner the most interest are Prince Charles and Princess Anne, Elizabeth's two eldest children. While both are notoriously private people, we were still able to dig in and find the truth about their lifelong relationship.
Have you ever noticed how behind the polished smiles of the royal family, there always seems to be a story we aren't told? A story full of quiet rivalries, hidden tensions, and choices that change everything. What we see in public is carefully managed, but behind those palace walls, the truth is often far more complicated. This isn't just about titles or crowns. It's about loyalty, betrayal, and the people who carry the weight of history while trying to live their own lives. Some names we know: Diana, Charles, Camilla, William, Kate. But the way their lives have crossed and collided has shaped the monarchy in ways that most of us never realized. And as we go deeper into this story, you'll see how the past never really disappears. It lingers, influencing decisions, relationships, and even the future of the crown itself. So let's start at the beginning, where the cracks first began to show.
It is announced from Buckingham Palace that with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate. Their Royal Highnesses have no plans to divorce, and their constitutional positions are unaffected.
A royal silence shattered. For years, the palace kept quiet. But now, Princess Anne and King Charles are no longer staying silent. They are ready to speak out about Camilla, the crown, and the Queen's final wishes. What had once been quiet whispers has now turned into an open conflict inside royal walls. It all came out during a banquet at Buckingham Palace. In a hall filled with leaders, guests, and dignitaries, Princess Anne stood tall. With a steady voice, she addressed Camilla, but not as queen. Instead, she called her queen consort. The difference was clear, and it was no mistake. It was a deliberate correction, made in public, and it was humiliating for Camilla. Anne didn't stop there. With calm but firm words, she reminded Camilla that Queen Elizabeth never agreed for her to be called queen. The Queen had only ever accepted her as consort. Anne's words were sharp and final. Her Majesty was clear: "You are queen consort. That is what the people were promised." The room fell into silence, heavier than any argument could have been. Camilla froze. The other royals looked shocked. But beneath the surface, this wasn't just a family disagreement. It was a warning. Anne knew something the world didn't. In the Queen's last days, Anne had spoken privately with her mother. In that talk, she promised to protect the crown. Watching Camilla take a role she was never meant to have, Anne felt it was her duty to step in. King Charles didn't move. He stood quietly, torn between his mother's final words and his wife's ambitions. He was now the king, but also a husband. His silence was loud and everyone noticed it. This wasn't seen as a simple clash. Inside the palace, it was taken as the first blow. Anne had made her position clear. The picture of a united royal family broke in that single moment. And as whispers spread, questions grew, and headlines followed, the monarchy faced one of its biggest storms in decades, an open battle within its own walls. But why did Anne decide to speak so openly? What pushed her to break years of silence? The roots of this conflict went back to betrayal, duty, and a secret only she and the Queen had shared. This wasn't just politics. It was deeply personal. Long before Camilla had a crown or stood beside a king, she had already hurt Anne in a way that never healed. And it didn't start with Charles. It started with Andrew Parker Bowles. In Anne's early adult years, Andrew was more than just a friend. He was always by her side, someone close to her in a life that was often restricted by rules and duty. Many believed they were in love, and some even thought marriage was possible. But there was one problem Anne could not escape. Andrew was Catholic. The monarchy's strong ties to the Church of England made marriage impossible. The decision wasn't hers. The crown made it for her. Anne had to let him go. She had no choice. But letting go didn't mean she forgot. Later, when Camilla married Andrew, it wasn't just another wedding.
Andrew Parker Bowles might have moved on after his marriage to Queen Camilla, but is he still cozying up with the royal family? Andrew Parker Bowles and Camilla's controversial marriage came to an end after they got divorced in 1995.
To Anne, it was a cut to the heart. Camilla had married the man Anne had been forced to leave behind, the man she had once imagined a future with. And Camilla had done it without hesitation, free from the weight of duty that had restricted Anne. The wound never faded. Then came the bigger blow, Camilla marrying Charles. For Anne, this wasn't love. It was betrayal layered on betrayal. When Charles and Camilla married in 2005, the atmosphere spoke louder than any words. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip stood polite but distant. Anne, however, was visibly cold. Her stiff posture and silent expression made her feelings clear. She didn't respect Camilla, and she never would. Anne's connection with Andrew never fully ended, even after his marriage to Camilla. They remained close, a reminder that unsettled Camilla whenever they met. That rivalry stayed beneath the surface, showing itself quietly at royal gatherings. But when Camilla dropped the consort part of her title and embraced being called queen, Anne had enough. To her, it wasn't just bold, it was wrong. Her refusal to curtsy wasn't rebellion, it was deliberate, and tradition backed her up. As a princess born into royalty, Anne outranked women who married into the family. She was the queen's only daughter, and by refusing to bow, she sent a message. She would never respect someone she saw as having taken her past, her brother, and now her mother's crown. But Anne's fight wasn't only about protocol. It was about something much bigger. She carried a secret her mother had left her. Before she passed, Queen Elizabeth made it clear. Camilla was never meant to be queen, a promise to the queen. In her final days, Queen Elizabeth spoke honestly in private. She explained her wishes calmly, not with anger, but with love for the crown and for the people. She said Camilla should only ever be known as Queen Consort, nothing more. That title, the Queen believed, honored both the monarchy and Diana's memory. Her words weren't recorded officially, but those closest to her remember them. Some say she repeated them more than once, worried they would be forgotten. Anne heard them directly, and she treated them as a vow. Even before the Queen passed, Anne reportedly told Camilla, "You are not queen, you are Queen Consort." That is what she wanted. For Camilla, those words may have felt like an insult, but for Anne, they were about loyalty, to her mother and to duty. The Queen had spent 70 years protecting the monarchy's image. With Camilla's controversial history, she had never planned for her to change that image with a single word. But when Queen Elizabeth died, things shifted.
This is BBC News from London. Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. In a statement, the palace said the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon.
While the nation grieved, Camilla quietly removed the word consort. There was no official statement, no open decision, just a quiet change in wording that started appearing in press releases and royal messages. To the public, it looked like a natural change. But to Anne, it was betrayal. And when the palace banquet arrived, and Camilla was introduced as Queen, Anne struck back. Her words were sharp, but they weren't personal attacks. They were reminders of her mother's clear wish. One palace aide later described the moment. He saw Anne's firm stare, Camilla's tight smile, and the heavy air between them. And he heard Anne say it directly. "Her Majesty never intended you to be queen." It wasn't a mistake. It was a public correction. A private disagreement had just become visible for the world to see. And from that point, the questions started. Did Charles know his mother's wishes? Did he once promise to follow them, only to change his mind when he became king? Or did he choose love over duty, giving Camilla the title she had wanted all along? As the monarchy stayed quiet, King Charles now faced the hardest choice of his life. King Charles stood at a crossroads. He could protect his mother's legacy, or he could protect his wife. There was no rule book to hide behind, and his silence left everyone guessing. For decades, Queen Elizabeth had led with duty above all else. Her final request had been simple. Camilla was not to be queen. But after her passing, that clear line became blurred. Charles wasn't only the king now, he was also a husband. The woman he had defended for decades, through scandal and criticism, was under fire from within his own family. Camilla had been controversial for years, but Charles worked hard to improve her image, slowly reintroducing her into public life. Through charity work and appearances, he tried to make people see her differently. Not everyone accepted her, not everyone forgave her, but Charles kept going. He leaned on William and Kate, pushing them forward as the fresh, popular face of the monarchy. Many thought he did this to take pressure off Camilla. But Camilla noticed the truth. She was never fully embraced. Her circle was small, her welcome always uncertain. Charles felt it too, but stayed quiet. If he defended her openly, he risked going against his late mother's wishes. If he stayed silent, he left her exposed to criticism. So he chose a middle ground, doing nothing, hoping time would soften the conflict. But time didn't heal. Anne only grew stronger in her stance, and Charles found himself stuck, not because of enemies outside the palace, but because of his own family. Kate, Diana's shadow, and Camilla's struggle. While Charles hesitated, Princess Anne acted with precision. Her stance made clear that loyalty to the Queen outweighed anything else. But another force in the royal family was also shaping the future: Kate Middleton. For Camilla, Kate wasn't just her daughter-in-law. She was the living reminder of Diana, a woman who had once captured the world's love. From the moment Kate stepped into royal life, Camilla felt her presence as a threat, not because Kate was ambitious, but because she had what Camilla could never earn: effortless affection from the public. Kate didn't need to fight for admiration. She didn't force her image. People embraced her naturally, just as they had once embraced Diana. For Camilla, who had spent years trying to move past scandal, that contrast was painful. It didn't help that Kate wasn't born into nobility. She had no aristocratic title, no royal bloodline, yet she carried herself with more grace than many who had grown up rehearsing royal roles. The public saw her as genuine, relatable, and sincere. And like Diana, Kate threw herself into charity work, focusing on children, education, and mental health. She listened, she showed up, and she cared.
Kate Middleton gives a heartfelt speech about the mental health of children, insisting, "This is something I really do care about." Kate makes a solo appearance at the opening of a children's mental health charity.
Each headline about her success was another blow to Camilla, who still struggled for the same level of respect. Tension between them grew quietly but steadily. Rumors spread that Kate's parents were once told to use the servants' entrance at Buckingham Palace, a slight that many believed wasn't accidental. Kate didn't retaliate. Instead, she held her composure. But at one royal event, she made a subtle but powerful move. She didn't curtsy to Camilla. It was quiet, but it echoed through the palace. That act wasn't defiance alone. It was a message. The days of silent obedience were gone. The Queen herself had always shown warmth toward Kate, welcoming her into the family with approval that Camilla never received. That difference weighed heavily on Camilla. Even with the crown, she still felt like an outsider. She had been expected to guide Kate, to mentor her, but she refused. Not because she couldn't, but because she didn't want to. That refusal spoke louder than words. It revealed a quiet war inside the palace, one Camilla couldn't win. The public's support leaned toward Kate, but it was William's resentment that sealed Camilla's fragile position. William's burden and the unforgiven past. For Prince William, Camilla was never truly family. To him, she wasn't royalty. She was the woman who stood where his mother should have been. His feelings weren't born out of tradition or protocol. They were rooted in childhood pain. William had been there during Diana's heartbreak. He wasn't just the future king. He was her confidant, her quiet supporter. As a boy, he saw his mother cry. He listened to her stories of betrayal. He witnessed her transformation from the beloved princess to a woman broken by scandal. William carried that burden, and it shaped his view of Camilla forever. When Diana died, William's world shattered, and before he could even process his grief, Camilla slowly began entering royal life. To the public, she was being introduced, but to William, she was being imposed. Reports from insiders said he never accepted her, only tolerated her for his father's sake. Their first meeting set the tone. Camilla was nervous, visibly unsettled, and afterward needed a drink to calm herself. It wasn't a warm beginning. It was the start of a Cold War. Over time, rumors circulated that Camilla had shared private details about William and Harry with select media allies. These subtle leaks painted William as distant or guarded. But those close to him knew why. He was protecting himself from being used again. His anger deepened when Camilla criticized his relationship with Kate. She reportedly believed Kate wasn't royal enough. To William, this was an insult. He saw in Kate what he never saw in Camilla: loyalty, kindness, and a safe presence he could trust. As William grew into his role, his popularity rose. He projected compassion and stability, elevating Kate alongside him. Without ever saying it, he made his message clear. The future would not include Camilla. Camilla felt the distance. She knew William's respect would never be hers. That quiet rejection haunted her position in the family. And yet, it was Kate's quiet resilience that became the final blow to Camilla's place in the monarchy. When Kate first entered William's life at university, few could imagine the role she would grow into. At the time, she was just another student. Their relationship began as a friendship, simple and natural, without the weight of titles. As their bond deepened, it became something undeniable. But in 2007, news of their breakup hit the press. Speculation swirled. Was it the palace, the pressure, the spotlight? Kate stayed silent. She didn't seek sympathy or attention. Instead, she carried herself with composure, reappearing in public with dignity. That strength won over the public. It also impressed the palace. When she and William reunited, it wasn't just a love story, it was proof of her resilience. But resilience alone wouldn't prepare her for royal life. She needed guidance. That came from Samantha Cohen, a senior advisor to the Queen. Cohen mentored Kate in protocol, diplomacy, and tradition. It wasn't about learning how to wave or bow, it was about learning how to carry the weight of the crown without wearing it. Meanwhile, the press compared her constantly to Diana. For some, it could have been a curse. For Kate, it became fuel. She honored Diana not by imitation, but through action, kindness, charity, and dedication. Her causes, childhood development, youth services, mental health, were more than appearances. She worked with sincerity and persistence. Over time, the public saw her not just as William's partner, but as a leader in her own right. Becoming a mother only strengthened her image. With George, Charlotte, and Louis, people saw not just a royal, but a mother balancing family with duty. That authenticity drew her closer to the public, and closer to the Queen. Queen Elizabeth grew to see Kate as more than a duchess. She saw her as a future monarch. Each time Kate wore Diana's ring or the Queen's jewels, it was more than fashion. It was a tribute, a symbol of continuity. With Kate rising and Anne standing firm, the monarchy was shifting. Camilla's place grew weaker. The crown she held seemed less secure with every passing day. The future and the shadows of the past. Secrets had been exposed. Loyalties were tested. The Queen's final words still lingered, unspoken but undeniable. And at the center of it all stood Camilla, She had once been the crown's most controversial figure. Now, she was its most fragile. Despite carrying the title of queen, her presence in the palace was quieter, colder, and increasingly sidelined. There was no formal demotion, no official statement, but those watching closely could see the shift. The public had already chosen. Their loyalty was with William and Kate. To them, the future didn't wear gray. It shone with the youth, dignity, and compassion that Diana once represented, and Kate now carried forward. Everywhere William and Kate went, crowds gathered, not just to see royalty, but to see hope. A monarchy softened by empathy, shaped by responsibility. In contrast, Camilla remained tied to the past, a chapter many believed should have closed with the Queen's death. Inside the palace, whispers grew louder. Some said Charles was quietly reducing Camilla's role. Others believed he was simply too tired to defend her anymore. His silence became its own answer. Anne remained steadfast, her presence a constant reminder of the Queen's wishes. She didn't need to repeat her words. Her refusal to bow, her sharp glances, those messages were clear enough. Camilla's legacy now hangs by a thread. Once defended fiercely by Charles, she now moves through the palace without the same shield of protection. Alliances shift quietly, eyes turn toward the future. And that future belongs to William. The question is no longer if, but when. What will he do when the crown is his? Will he keep the balance, or will he act on decades of unspoken resentment and strip Camilla of the title she was never meant to wear? No royal decree can predict it. The monarchy has changed. It is no longer shaped only by bloodlines and traditions. It is influenced by public sentiment, buried truths, and the shadows of those who came before. Every crown carries a shadow. And in this shadow lies the possibility that the Queen's final words may one day be fulfilled, even if it means rewriting Camilla's place in history. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like and share.